is a testament to what Calipari is done. Okay. Good old fashioned. Let's talk about what happened on the floor last night in college basketball podcast. No bells or whistles coming along with this one. No fancy titles or games that we'll be playing. There are 4 basketball games we want to talk about in yet another good night of college basketball. 4 games, 2 in the Big East, 1 in the Big 12, 1 in the SEC. Because I don't know if you knew, Josh, there are a lot of really good teams at the top of the Big East, and they just kind of play what seem to be really important basketball games.
They're just all playing each other over this 2-week stretch. It's incredible.
Yeah. And, that's tough when, 2 of the 4 teams that we're talking about here, maybe not 2 of the 4, 2 of the 5 being, Marquette and Providence being way better and way more important on the national stage than they were ever supposed to be. Then you kind of end up with this, they're all bunched together when it's just supposed to be like a solid portion of the schedule. And now you've got, who do we talk about on the last pod? Like somebody is playing Providence, UConn, and Creighton in the next 3 games. Maybe it was Marquette. I'm not sure. But anyways, yes, they're all together. There are a lot of really good games kind of in this 2-week stretch. But last night, number 25, Marquette, 82. Number 6, UConn, 76. Marquette down by 4 at halftime, outscores the Huskies by 10 in the second half, 49-39. 82-76, like I said, the final score. Marquette's guys that have been doing it all year, just kind of doing it again. Tyler Kolek doing his thing, distributing the basketball, and they get enough done at home to come back and beat UConn. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, Marquette just doing what Marquette does offensively. Casual 50% shooting from the field. Just another day at the office. And on the UConn side, I mean, Donovan Clingan was a monster off the bench. If there's one thing this UConn team can hold on to, it's somewhere you get production off that bench. It seems like every game, whether it's Clingan having a really good game or somebody else and Clingan contributing a little bit because he's obviously a factor, even if he's only scoring 8 points as opposed to 20. But this is becoming a thing with these guards. Andre Jackson, Tristan Newton, Jordan Hawkins, 8 of 23 for 24 points. And, it was Sonogo the game before. It was Donovan Clingan in this game. It's not like the interior there was a little bit of a stretch where, we were talking about his teams kind of figured Sonogo out, and he hasn't been quite the same player since they got into conference play, obviously. But then you have Donovan Clingan to go sort of fill that gap in a game like this. And so the interior is not the problem. Adama Sonogo struggles are not the problem here. The problem is you're just getting no efficiency from that perimeter, and it is simply not good enough to win these games against the other teams in the Big East, especially on the road against a Marquette team that's going to show up and play hard because they're coached by Shaka Smart. And they've figured out how to turn this into an efficient offense and move the ball really well and all that kind of stuff. They're difficult to scheme against. And so now I'm getting a little conflicted about UConn because part of me still believes in them 100%, and part of me is really wondering if they're as good as and we'll get to the other teams in this conversation in the next game, but if they have the ability game after game to keep pace with the best teams in the Big East. I'm not jumping ship quite yet, but this is becoming a major concern that somebody has to produce from the guard position. Because if there's one question about this team I have, it's who's that guy at the end of a game? Are you feeding Sonogo? Right? And you look at the other teams in this conference, they kind of have that more defined. And it's kind of just, point guard by committee, Andre Jackson, Tristan Newton, Jordan Hawkins needs to be able to shoot the ball really well, and sometimes that doesn't happen. There's just a lot of question marks and things that there's a lot that needs to go right to beat UConn, and there's a lot of things UConn needs to go right to beat the best teams in the Big East. That's kind of where I'm at.
It's unacceptable that Adama Sonogo in a big game is 5 of 7 from the field. With all due respect to Donovan Clingan is not better than Adama Sonogo.
No.
Even if he might have arguably been last night. In 19 minutes, he was 10 of 10 on 5 of 7 from the field. I don't care how good Donovan Clingan has been. You don't play him over to Adama Sanogo ever. All of the games that UConn is struggling in correlate to how many shots Sanogo has taken. The guards were horrendous against Creighton. Horrendous. Why'd they win the basketball game?
Sanogo was the best player on the floor.
Exactly. They fed him the entire game. And he hit a couple threes, and he was on the end of he was in the right place every single time in that long possession that kind of sealed the game when it was, a minute long possession because they got so many, tip outs and offensive rebounds. I mean, play them both for all I care. Just play them both for 5 minutes. Just see how it goes. If you feel like Clingan's playing that well. But it's irresponsible as a head coach to let the best player in the Big East go 5 of 7 from the field and only play 19 minutes when he only had one foul. Since when are we not playing our best player just because somebody off the bench is playing pretty well? That's what happened last night. Donovan Clingan should never play more minutes than Adama Sanogo. Never. Because Adama Sanogo stretches the floor now. Adama Sanogo is shooting 40% from the 3-point line and taking 30 of them. So he's not taking a ton of them, but he's also not taking 7 of them.
And he's certainly more of a threat to stretch the floor than Clingan is, regardless of whether he's hitting him at a high clip or not.
Exactly. And he's doing both of those things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Relatively, especially for a guy who took 1 3-pointer in his first 2 years of college. Didn't make 1, took 1 total. And he's added it to his game. So all of the things you just said are true. The guards have to be better. And, I can't, 8 of 23?
Mm-hmm.
My apologies if you gave that stat already. 3 of 12 from the 3-point line. Yeah, I mean, what you said is absolutely true. And that might end up being why UConn doesn't win the basketball game. But, I'm sorry, win the Big East. But, I don't understand. Dan Hurley's a really good basketball coach, and I thought he made a fundamental mistake of not putting his best player on the floor as much as he could. That just fails the out loud test. It just does. And maybe there was something else going on, but I watched back this game because I didn't get to see it live. And before I watched the game, I saw how many minutes Sanogo had played and just assumed he had been in foul trouble. And he hadn't been. And I just don't good for Donovan Clingan. It would be even more outrageous if Clingan didn't have 20 and 10 on 8 of 11 shooting. But is anybody arguing that Clingan is actually better than Sanogo? I don't think so. You're weird if you are. I don't know. That's frustrating. If I was a UConn fan, that'd be incredibly frustrating to me. Because Clingan just should never, ever, ever play more minutes than Sanogo. I don't care how good he's playing.
And especially in a game where you're trying to stem the tide, which was the entire second half, right?
Right.
Of trying to get back within a couple possessions, trying to not let it get into double digits, trying to put a run together to retake the lead after Marquette had come out. Marquette won that second half. I think you said it was by 10. That was when the game changed. You're trying to do something you're trying to do something different because what was, the attempt that was made was not working. And so it's the whole Dan Hurley personality thing is very interesting to me in the way it goes with this team and the expectations and the way this season started. We don't need to get into that now, but yeah, they're probably going to roll off, 5, 6, 7 straight wins at some point here because they're going to stop playing all the best teams in the conference. But there are some clear flaws and questions that need to be asked right now that nobody was really contemplating being a possibility a month ago.
Yeah. And figuring it out should never involve you taking your best player off the floor. If that's the best you can come up with, you need to go back to the drawing board. If taking out your best player is the best you can come up with to remedy issues. But at the end of the day, and like I'm also like I wish that like it just doesn't seem like they're ever going to share the floor this year, which is fine. Like I get why Donovan Clingan and Adama Sanogo are never going to share the floor this year, but like maybe when you're like up by 7 in the first, before the under 6 timeout. I mean, sorry, the under 12 timeout against Georgetown at home. Wait, that already happened. They weren't. Never mind. When DePaul comes to town, when you're just like already up by 18 with 2 minutes to go in the 18 minutes left to go in the second half, and like you've been controlling the game, just like throw them in there for 4 minutes. Just see what happens. Maybe you'll stumble upon something that is just like maybe not great in long stretches, but like for 3.5 minutes, the defense is like, what in the world do we do with these two guys?
And then by the time they come up with an answer, they're out.
Right. It doesn't have to be for a long time because ultimately Dan Hurley is correct in thinking that that's probably not the best idea for his basketball team for long stretches. But sometimes just overwhelming size just makes you think about so many other things. Or you're not thinking about anything else just because of how big those two guys are on the floor together.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought. But the guards do need to be better. Of course, that's right. That's my philosophy. I'm going to go look to how your guard play is first when it comes to the NCAA tournament, when it comes to me identifying the ceiling of your team, all of those things. And they're just all three of those guards, the nature of their games is that they're just sometimes going to have nights where they can't hit the broadside of a barn. And like, especially Jordan Hawkins, who you fancy is the best scorer on your basketball team, and he hasn't been great in conference play at all. Yeah, it's crazy how fast your ceiling comes down when your guards aren't playing well. And some of them played fine. I mean, Jackson, he stuffed the stat sheet 9, 6, and 4,
as he always does. Right,
that's a block and a steal and 4 of 7 from the field. I mean, he was fine. I feel a little guilty roping him into this, but like the point is still the same.
Right, you need somebody to go be that, and he's not supposed to be that guy. He's supposed to do exactly what he did. Right, he's your defender, your energizer, your secondary facilitator, all that stuff. He's not supposed to be the scorer.
Right,
but when Newton and Hawkins are struggling that much, somebody else needs to score, and he's kind of the next guy up, and he just hasn't looked confident taking that responsibility when he's needed to.
Last thing on this game, I adore Tyler Kolek. Adore. Like 6, 8, and 5. He had 5 turnovers in this game, but like 6, 8, and 5, 3 of 6 shooting. And I get that he has the luxury of being able to play like this because of the 3 of the 5 guys in the starting lineup are just bucket getters. I wrote in a Big East roundtable for busting brackets about how few points that starting 5 had combined before the season, like had averaged last year, and now they had 3 guys averaging like 14, 15 points a game. And like part of that is because Tyler Kolek makes life so easy for that offense. And any guy who is pushing a 1-to-1 ratio with his points and assists in college basketball is just my dude. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, against UConn, it was 6 points, 8 assists. Against Georgetown, it was 7 points, 15 assists. St. John's, he really was a bucket getter, 14 points and 8 assists. Oh, and then by the by, sometimes he's just going to knock down, on a good night, he's just going to go 11 of 15 from the field because Providence didn't know how to guard a pick and roll, and he'll have 29.
Yeah, and he's I think he's close to a 40% 3-point shooter, at least was last season.
He is a 34% 3-point shooter this year.
Okay, so maybe I'm stretching a little bit, or maybe that was last season, but he's a good shooter. That was kind of the first thing that stood out to me about him, and now he's turned into this mega facilitator. And the other thing I want to throw out there about Marquette before we move on is exactly like you said. One of the most amazing things about this is it's not like they really upgraded their roster. If anything, technically it downgraded because you lost Justin Lewis. Right? This is all internal improvement from the same group of guys who were there last season. It's not like anybody came in and changed the complexion of this team. They just all got a lot better and have figured out how to play really well together. And Cam Jones has become, one of the better players in the Big East, right? And it's just good coaching. Guys who now are really comfortable with each other, who know everybody's strengths and weaknesses. It's the epitome of what college basketball sort of used to be, but you don't see it anymore. And here's Marquette showing it still works. Good for them, good for Shaka, good for Tyler Kolek.
Do you know who the other two guys that are ahead of him in assists per game are?